I would say at the end of the day, like 99.9% of the time, you're using our technology, you're working with our team. It looks about the same in many ways because when things work, they work. No one does anything. Okay, but when things break and they're not working, this is where owning 100% of the infrastructure stack matters. This is where having a team that's every day thinking about, hey, how do we make our clients win matters? Because what happens in those situations? When that payment goes wrong, right? Someone's going to reach out to Todd. Todd needs to have that answer ASAP.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the 6x6 Lock Podcast, a secure money movement podcast for the private markets. On this episode of the show, Todd Sorrel and I are joined by Alex Du, Chief Operating Officer at Column, a nationally chartered bank built to enable developers and builders to create new financial products. If you're a leader in the private markets, or frankly, any business, this episode is packed with incredible insights for you. Get ready to take some notes. Alex and Todd share some amazing stuff. Now, before we get to the conversation with Alex, please do make sure you subscribe to the 6x6 Lock Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for the show, hit us up. Just shoot us an email, podcast@6lock.com. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Alex Du. Well, Alex Du, welcome to the 6x6 Lock Podcast. We're so wonderfully happy to have you here. Awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, let's go. I'm excited.
That's I love Todd. Todd's like stoked. He's probably like 3 Red Bulls in already, like really pumped to get into the show today.
Only 3 times?
4.
Yeah.
Easily, y'all.
3, that's lightweight. That's rookie numbers.
I bring that up because the last podcast that Todd and I recorded together was in person, and he did walk in carrying the Red Bull. I'm like, oh, he came to play today. He's like ready to go.
Yeah, I have no NIL package though, so hopefully I get work on some type of commercial
Todd's out here
sponsorship
building
here.
a company. 3 Red Bulls is lightweight.
That is awesome.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well,
It's that I'm balancing out raising teenagers, so you got
whatever it takes.
That's 5 or 6 at least.
Survival mode, dude. Survival. That's all good. Well, this is fantastic. I'm really thrilled to have you here, Alex. And we had a wonderful prep call. And one of the really interesting things was, during our prep call, and I think this is a great way to kick things off, you just kind of drop something casually that really gives us an awesome origin story to talk about you and Column. So you mentioned I dropped out of college to join this as employee number 1. And we're like, oh, okay, your parents must be thrilled or whatever. And I asked a logical follow-up question, which was like, well, where were you going to school? And you're like, oh, Stanford. So let's talk about this. What was it that would cause you to decide, you know what, I'm doing this Stanford Graduate School of Business thing, but you know what, I'm not going to finish right now. I'm going to go join this other startup deal because it's so important.
Yeah. When I was in business school at the time, in my mind, and I had been an investor beforehand, and one of the things that I had heard from folks I worked with, some of the best folks in the industry on the investor side who came to the school while I was there to talk to us about early stage investing. And they had this really simple framework that I bought into, is that, hey, if you're super early stage, there's only a couple things that matter. What market are you going after? Is it a large market size? Are there a lot of visceral problem statements in that market? And are you doing it with the right people? And I think people generally try to overcomplicate, hey, early stage investing, I got to go do this analysis, I got to do all this stuff. And the reality is, the best plan, when you get punched in the face, it goes out the window and you're on plan B and you're on plan C and you're on plan D. And the only thing that matters underneath all of that, if you're an early stage company, is, hey, are you generally still playing in the right market? Are the problem statements you're solving really important problem statements? And are you doing it with the right people? And then the plan itself, it's like, hey, then you're on plan D, plan E. That's okay, as long as those other pieces are there. And so for me, I got into a situation where that showed up, right? For us, what I call them is, hey, we play in one of the largest markets in the world, financial services. There's a very visceral problem statement of, man, most people don't like working with their bank partners, but they really need their bank partners for a variety of reasons. And here's this guy, William Hockey, who's our CEO, co-founder of Plaid, who's going out to do this. And so I look at this situation, I'm like, you know what? It doesn't get better than this. Why wait to graduation? Right. And I had a conversation with William. He's like, hey, let's go do this. And I said, hey, let's see you tomorrow. Let's go get this done.
Yeah. So it's TAM and team
Exactly.
in a way.
Yeah.
And now that framework, was that really put out there by a special, was it like a former student or a special speaker coming to speak to you? Was it a professor that put that out there? Like yeah, that's fascinating to me. Like, who planted that seed for you on that?
Yeah, it was, it's a pretty popular framework. I would say that I don't think it's popular in the sense that like people read it and they're like, oh, okay, sure. And then, when you actually look at the way people operate, they don't actually operate that way. They start getting too deep in the weeds, analysis and all that stuff. And so, I came from a private equity firm. We had that as part of our investment thesis for larger companies. And then,
That's right.
when I was on campus, all the great VCs from Sand Hill will come on campus and they would, walk through their frameworks and stuff. And for me, I just boiled it down like, maybe I'm one of those guys that can't keep 20 thoughts in my head at the same time. The processing power might be a little slower than most folks. And I'm like, you know what, I keep hearing all these different theses and frameworks that everyone has. Let me just make it really simple for myself, right? And it's pretty much, are you in a big market? Are you solving an important problem? Are you doing it with the right people? And generally, if those three things are true, and I've been doing this for a while now and seeing companies become successful, those three things are true for all the companies that have become successful.
Yeah, that's right. That's a common theme there. There's no doubt about it. Hey, how did you and William meet? I mean, so I want to talk about the TAM side of this, but I think before you even get into like the analysis of like, let's talk about this whole giant marketplace. I can't even fathom what that TAM is that you guys laid out as far as just kind of like landscape and how we're going to go and, hit the beach and attack this.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me about William. How did you guys meet? What's the story there?
Yeah. So William, William was coming out of Plaid at the time, and he had sort of a V0 idea of what column is today. And so he was coming out of Plaid. One of the problems if you're, a successful founder at that first time and you're coming out and you're thinking about doing another business, everyone's paying attention, right? And so what he said was, hey, I want to operate under the radar. Most builders want to be under the radar. They don't want to be front and center. They want to focus on building. And he very much had that mentality, but he can't do that as a co-founder of Plaid. So he wanted to find someone who was, a little bit less well-known for me, unknown at all at that time. Right. And he wanted someone to be more at the forefront of doing the initial parts of building, right. Doing all those customer calls, doing the market research without drawing attention to what ultimately we were building. And he wanted someone hungry. He wanted someone who was willing to dig in, a sweat equity guy. I was obviously in this MBA program, didn't say enough dumb things where he thought, hey, maybe we'll give this guy a shot. And while I was in business school at the time, I actually was his intern for a couple months, just doing research, right? Doing the typical things that you do when you're looking at a company. Make 100 phone calls, talk to everyone in and around the space that matters, right? Get as much information as you can to help formulate those thoughts, because most likely that V0 thesis is incorrect. And how do you get to the right place over time? You just got to talk to everyone you can get on the phone with. And so that was essentially my job the first few months as an intern, which ultimately evolved into the phone call of, hey, let's go do this thing.
Yeah. So what, man, that is boots on the ground 101. Getting a company off the ground is digging into that TAM space and really understanding it quite a bit. What resonated with you? I mean, look, after making all those phone calls and really asking great questions and learning about this space and what's going on, and like discovering the fact that people do really need this banking partner to execute on things where they just have been apprehensive before, maybe even go develop and create that things that may not be in place today. The tools and things may be there, but like it's not there. So as I look at this from what you just said, like you have a trove of data like that you're sitting on here. What are a couple things that really kind of came at you the most that made you really kind of step back and go, have that moment like, whoa, we're really onto something here.
Yeah, I think listen, trillions of dollars move through the U.S. banking system every single day. And that's either banks transferring money to other banks or companies working with banks to transfer money or people working with banks to transfer money. And if you look at the space and through those phone calls, what I realized is, man, no one likes their banking partner, right? So you have trillions of dollars moving through the USD banking ecosystem every single day. And you talk to the companies who are doing it and they're like, you know what, like, It's a necessary evil, right? Here's the stuff that I don't like, but it works, but it could be 10x better. And so you look at it and you're like, man, that is a tremendous amount of GDP that's moving every single day through a massive ecosystem, yet no one is happy with it. Okay, if we can make a little dent there, we're probably going to build a pretty big business, right? That's like from a fundamental perspective, looking at the problem,
Yep.
huge problem statement, huge market. And then you like peel back the onion a little bit and you say, okay, why do people not like it? What's the issue here, right? And you see generations of legacy technology built on top of each other to the point that you can't actually undo it. That existing infrastructure was, hey, banks on 1980s cores that became 1990s technology that put lipstick on it, that then became 2000s technology that put lipstick on it. Then a generation of fintechs built a middleware layer on top of it. And it was one of those situations, like in my mind, the way I think about it is like incrementalism, right? There was incremental layers built up and no one had looked at it from a full stack perspective. And if you look at other industries, right? Why were the hotel brands not able to create Airbnb? Why were taxi companies not able to create Uber? Why were all these companies not able to create the business that ultimately disrupted? Well, it's because they were doing that incrementalism. They've been around for 40 years, right? They kept building, and they end up with a stack that's suboptimal. And we had a chance in the thesis to go in 0 to 1. Truly fresh. Hey, let's look at the market and build the way that we think it should be built today. And to me, when I look at that analogy, then no one had done that in banking. So you had all these disruption across, like I said, right, like taxi companies, hotel companies, right? Maybe even if you think about DoorDash and what they did with takeout and logistics, okay, all these companies were in these different spaces and revolutionized these spaces. No one had done that for banking. And so that, to me, I was like, hey, there's a, totally wide open opportunity. Once again, in the big space, real problems, real people.
I love it. It's like you really like fundamentally redefined what banking is, right? In some way, right? If you think about it, right? Like it's reapproaching it. And it wasn't just the full stack approach, right? And kind of coming at it a different way there. You also redefined culturally what it means to be a banker. Right. And we talked a little bit about this in our prep call, right? When you think about like everybody has an image of what the banker is, banker's hours, we hear about that. And like what kind of like the suit and tie type of deal, working downtown at the bank. Everybody knows what it was like, thinking about that person growing up. But during our prep call, you said something that really jumped out to Todd and I, and we actually went down this really long conversation about it. So I wanted to bring it up here because it's really an interesting one. You said culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think you're living proof of that, right? You've been there, you're employee number one, you're now in a very big leadership position there at the company. You've been there for 6 years. Things are going great. So talk to me about what it means to kind of establish culture and grow culture in an industry that's just not known for that, right? To just honestly, you think about lifers at most banks. Yeah, it's kind of like the mental state of people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one analogy I always think about, and I'm not the biggest sports fan in the world, but I do occasionally dabble, right? And you hear about championship cultures, and you hear about championship teams, right? I'm out here in the Bay Area. The Warriors had that for many years, and there's something different about that team and the culture. You have all these NBA teams; they're all professional athletes, they're all best in the world, right? But how come some teams come together and they're just better? How come a bad team can become a good team with a changing coach, but the same players? Or one new guy comes in and it changes the whole dynamic of the team. To me, that's championship culture and DNA, right? And you hear athletes talk about it, they get it. And it's a little bit more obvious when you see athletes because the seasons are compressed. There's a faster feedback loop. But you see it and they get it, right? Because some folks will go from a losing team and the vibe just isn't there, right? What are the players there for? To make money. To be a professional athlete. They're not quite there, bought into the vision, bought into that team to win championships. And that's something that we focus on really early on day one is how do you build that championship DNA and culture? And how do you make sure that that's in the locker room, like in our office every single day?
Yeah, I think, would you say for it to be really truly impactful and getting everybody in the boat and everything, that culture, that intention around that culture has to be radical. Because I certainly believe here at our company, like we're radical. We want them in the boat. We're telling our message. We're all in. The leadership's all in. Like this is who we are. This is our mission. What we're going to go do. Tell me about that. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I always say, listen, I'm a shoulder to shoulder type of a guy from a leadership perspective, right? If we're charging up the hill, like what do I mean by shoulder to shoulder? When you look across, I'm shoulder to shoulder with you, right? Anything that we're doing together. Yeah. Obviously, like ideally, in some situations, I'll be up front, but at minimum, I'm shoulder to shoulder from you. You're never gonna, never gonna be like, hey, we got to do these 10 things, and you look behind you, and I'm like sitting there just chilling, right? Like, hey, let me know how it goes. Let me check in.
Yeah, totally.
That's kind of like that energy that we bring, right? And it starts with William, me, other folks on our leadership team, and that bleeds out across the rest of the organization. So I think there's an element of this is a negative word, right? Micromanaging. This is a word that everyone's like, ooh, like I'm not a micromanager. I don't. But I do think culture has to be micromanaged up front because there's a certain point where it's harder to manage the culture down the road. And if you don't micromanage the culture up front, then it gets really hard when you're at 50, 100, 150 people and things are happening that it is impossible for you to be in a room for. It is impossible for you to be on every customer conversation, every internal decisioning meeting, every cross-functional discussion. And what the ideal state is when that company is at that stage, that I can have trust that things are happening the way that I think they should. Things are happening in the way that we collectively as a team want it to happen to make the business as successful as possible. And then if that is the endpoint, then you have to rewind to the start and make sure that's ingrained in every single person, early employee, because that ultimately compounds over those years and compounds as you go from 10 people to 50 and 100. And I'll give you one example to bring us back to, kind of the sports example I was saying, right? That championship DNA culture, hey, those teams, you think they're eating dinners together every day? Yeah. What are they doing after practice? They're probably not going home to do their own thing. They're probably living their entire lives together, right? They're bought in. They know each other's kids. They're hanging out with each other's families, right? Hey, there's a loss. What's happening? I'll see you at the gym tonight. Let's put some more work in, right? And those are the little things that compound over time. That's the difference between that championship team and another team in the league. And for us, like, let's translate that to the business startup world. That's, hey, it's 10 p.m. We still have 3 more things to do. We're going to go to bed and do it tomorrow morning, or we're going to do it now? Hey, there's a client who needs something. You're going to shoot an email or you're going to jump on a plane? Hey, there's this candidate who is world-class and we want to bring him on the team. Okay, am I going to move 3 meetings to go talk to that person right now? Or am I going to, hey, let it fall into some scheduling hole and 3 weeks later I'm having that conversation, right? If I see someone who is performing at a 95% level and I know that person is capable of 100, am I going to say something or am I going to be like 95 is good enough? Right? Those are all the little things up front that once we ingrain that at an individual level with the early team compounds, and now we're 150 and that bleeds through the organization, right? And that's not, at this point, I could not go into another company at 150 and at least within a short period of time, bring that kind of culture. It would take time. It would take significant time. The bigger the organization, the more, legacy, culture, infrastructure that's in there, it's harder to turn that ship.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly leadership by example, right? I mean, y'all set the tone. You step up and people are watching how you respond to things, how you respond to that client, problem they have or a hurdle to get over. And it takes, maybe a couple of people getting in the room together, and you're not delaying that. You're not putting that off 3 weeks or putting into some scheduling time warp, as you say. Let me ask you this, just when you met William, you are going through this kind of getting started, were there a couple culture things? Was there anything from Plaid that he brought over? Were there some ideas that really resonated that kind of hit you as y'all sort of kind of develop and kind of form, what does this company feel like? And I'll just step back a moment and just let you say, I've been to your offices. The moment you come in, you'll have great culture. You can just feel the vibe. People are jammed. People are happy working there. People are happy collaborating together. And I don't even know what department some people are, but it looks like it's it looks like one big happy party when you walk in. Everybody's jamming together. I don't know what sections what part of the org they're from, but it's a really good feeling, and you can get that vibe when you come in. That's not hard to create. That's not easy to create. It's very hard to create. I think y'all landed in a really good place of doing that at this moment. But just curious, Kylie, was there Was there any little some threads or kind of some things that really came from Plaid that you really wanted to say, hey, this just needs to be part of Column?
Yeah, it's listen, there are many benefits from William having had the Plaid experience, right? And I'll start by just saying this is my first go around. It was his second go around. He was obviously very successful the first time, and we've been successful the second time, at least up to this point. Obviously, we have a lot more work to do. But the benefit that I got is, hey, I had bad instincts over the last 6 years. And I think a lot of founders, CEOs, leaders who find themselves in those positions for the first time, they have bad instincts, because oftentimes building a company, building a successful company is not necessarily the obvious answers or decisions each time, right? And in fact, that might actually be the wrong outcome. If you're thinking along the consensus over and over again, like, you're probably not going to build a very successful company. And so I'll say, like, for a while, I won't say I had like the worst decisions 10 out of 10 times, but there were many times where I had bad instincts, and William said, hey, like, I've seen this before. I'm just telling you, here's how it played out. Here's how to think about it. Let's move on. Right. And enough times I trusted him to a point where I'm like, hey, when we're having that conversation, understood, let's move on. Right. And then we do a look back. I'm like, man, that guy was right again. I hate it when he does that. Man, I hate it when he's like, I'm batting like 1 for 10. He's like 9 out of 10. I'm batting like 1 for 10. But now I know, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, first timer, I think my instincts have gotten better. Now, obviously, if I were to go back, I could redo things better. But I have my own learning curve. We've gotten to really benefit from that from a business execution perspective. On the culture building side, I think what I learned from William, what I generally have this intuition around myself as well, and like that we've built at this company, is what do high performers really want? Right? At the end of the day, what makes a high performer happy? High performers are happy being around other high performers. High performers are happy doing work that's impactful, seeing like, hey, my input equals this output.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, hey, how do we make sure we offer those two things, right? And maybe the third point is like, as folks grow, that we have unlimited ability to feed them in terms of opportunities, responsibilities, and things like that, right? And so for us, that's how we think about it from a talent management that bleeds into culture of Todd, to your point, like, hey, everyone seems really bought in and happy at the company. I think for us, it's, we want to go build the most successful company we can. That creates a ton of surface area as a business to create opportunities for people. And obviously, as we keep the team small, which is a big thing for us, folks get that responsibility. People on the team can grow into those expanding surface areas, and they can see the impact of the work they did today, next week, next month, 3 months from now. They can see that feedback loop and the impact. And then also keeping what I mentioned earlier, right, that talent density. Man, nothing drains energy more than your A player sitting in a group of Bs or Cs or whatever, right? We see this at a lot of corporations. And I think this is probably most prevalent in large corporations that ultimately end up bleeding their A players, because they have folks who are trying to drive, trying to get stuff done, trying to make an impact. And they look around and be like, why am I doing this here? What's the point? Right? I'm trying to do this. I'm running into, all this internal infrastructure that is working against me, this negative inertia. Or, hey, I did all this stuff and these two folks got a bunch of the credit. Like that doesn't make sense, right? Like, hey, I'm a team player, but at a certain point, it's like, you want to be recognized for your work as well. And so for us, it's just, hey, how do we build an environment for A players to show up? Well, let me actually, even maybe a step before that, build a recruiting apparatus to get A players in, and then build the environment to feed those A players over time, to give them what they want, and let those two things compound.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of those incentives for you? Like what are some of those incentives for your A players as you think about that? And as you say that, what kind of dawned on me too, I was just thinking was, I'm sure there's a priority here to promote from within.
Yeah.
When you somebody, one of the things you want to feed some of those top performers or opportunities, right? Whether that be, a title, more responsibility, or give them a new project that may be that we're kind of thinking about, maybe another vertical, somebody maybe just to kind of like dive into and really to maybe see what their thoughts are on it. Cause you trust them and you value what their insight on that. But, yeah, top performers, just incentives for them. How do you manage that today? What does Colin kind of put out there, not only for like those that are internally already on your team, but maybe as you go out to the marketplace, if there is a position or two that you want to kind of bring in from the outside, what does that look like to you today?
You hit on a couple of the points that I think are really important, right? And I talk to the team about this all the time. I'm probably the best example of growing talent from within. And so one of the things that folks may see is, okay, first employee, started up the company with William. Okay, makes sense that he's a COO. That was not the case. And this actually gets back to maybe one of those lessons that William learned that really benefited me and the company. When I started, first employee, I was, effectively an analyst, right? I'm a guy on the business team. First 2-3 years, I was a guy on the business team. Why? Because I hadn't done it before. I had those bad instincts. And looking back, like I shouldn't have been in the seat I am today. I was not ready for that seat. However, the trade's not the right word, but the pact, right, was always, hey, you show up, you do your best work, you add value, you help build this business. And as the business surface area grows, you will get that responsibility. Like, let it happen naturally, right? And I think this is a mistake that a lot of people who I see building up companies make is, sometimes people get really noisy. Sometimes folks want to reach too far. And you have this mismatch where you have someone who's really good, who will be really good in 2-3 years for the job that person wants. And it feels really unnatural right now to be like, hey, like, you need another year or two of development, right? Let me move you around, give you a bunch of experiences. And then 2-3 years from now, you're going to be just 10x better. And the problem right now with there's all the headlines love the instant gratification story, 22-year-old billionaire founder or a 30-year-old takes over as CEO. I'm not taking anything away from those people, but they're like N of 1, N of 2, whatever small number. And that's not how we should be developing talent, right? And listen, if you go to Stanford, you go to the MBA program, every single person there is like, I should probably be the CEO tomorrow. They're like, look, I got full work experience. I got this flashy MBA. I did all this learning. I could go run a business tomorrow. Put me in as CEO of Pepsi, right? It's something like it's something so like that. And it's like, no. Like maybe you can. Like I'm not trying to take away from those people. 100%, the potential is there, but you got to go through a development path. And so going back to the question of like, hey, how do you feed the 8 players over time? It is what I say to the team is we're a next man off the bench, next woman off the bench type of culture, right? I came off the bench. I helped build a company, came off the bench. When the need for a COO arose, I came off the bench and went to that seat. We have GMs at the company who came off the bench to go be GMs. We have head of groups who came off the bench to be head of groups. And in each of those situations, we've promoted internally versus looking externally. And so we have that track record now. And so when I look at the next 8 players looking to join, who's saying like, well, listen, I have this, make it up, head of this business function offer at a Series A company who's selling me that their equity package is worth tens of hundreds of whatever, made up number, right? Why should I do that versus go into the system at Colin? Well, it's because we're about tangible results, first of all. All those numbers, sure, those are numbers on the page. We're about dollars in the bank. Okay, right. So you decide what's more important for you. And we're about tangible skill set and development, right? So, hey, you can go get this sexy title at whatever company and tell your friends and throw up high fives. And I've been in this game long enough to know that, hey, 99 out of 100 times those folks are looking for jobs again in 2 years, right? Or you can come here and be a part of this championship team and work through the system. And you know what? I think in 3 to 5 years, you can be so much happier that you were doing it here with us, building up that real skill set.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's just like, if you're coming into a company and like Colin right now, and you're on that cusp of that 150 person, and let's just say you've been there for 2 or 3 years, you've at least seen it double. right? And you've at least been
Yeah.
a part of conversations within the office of outside of your normal realm. So if I've come into marketing, I know for a fact I've been in engineering meetings. I've seen you and I've seen William have conversations and how to solve problem solving. And so
Yeah.
like, what is that worth? That is incredible. Are you kidding me? If you have a chance to come into a company from early set out of school, at MBA school, maybe a few years under your belt, but to come into an organization that really has momentum, that has a goal in mind, it's very clear with mission. TAM's is laid out in front of you. Product is like, why would you not want to just soak it all in and just be like, I'm here to win. I'm here to win with this team, and I'm going to be your free safety.
Yeah.
If you need me to come up to the line of scrimmage, I'll do it. If I got to drop back in coverage, I'm there too.
Yeah, what do you need, right? I'll be the water boy.
Yeah.
No, well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, and the answer is yeah. Like if you look at folks who've been here for a couple of years, they've seen more than a double. We're doubling each year, and so over a 2 year, I actually over the last 3 years, you would have seen a 10x actually in the business, and you would see a 10x, and I'll set myself aside, but you'll see a 10x watching a guy like William and the other executives on our team play at a world-class level. And that's benefit for me too, looking at the team here and seeing what world-class looks like.
Yeah.
And that's especially if you're early on in your career, man, I don't know what's more valuable than that. Because then everywhere else you go for the rest of your career, what good looks like. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, and this isn't even up to the individual, it's sometimes just bad luck, right? You join a company, maybe you think it's world-class and get in there and it's not. And it's not necessarily like the individual's fault, but you don't get a chance to see it. And so, I do think the folks here get a chance to see a lot of the folks that I work with, the team that I work with day to day on the leadership side. I think we have world-class people in a lot of those seats. And myself and the folks that work here, we get to see them operate at that level and learn every single day.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, speaking of 10X, here we go. So, I keep referencing our prep call, but it was one of the best prep calls we've had. We went really deep on a lot of things, and one of the logical questions that came up in our conversation was, listen, most fintech companies that are deciding to enter the banking space kind of do it as a bolt-on, if you will, right? They go use somebody else's banking infrastructure, they layer some tech on it, and then they call it a day, right? But you and William and the team decided, nope, we're actually going to buy a bank and then build our own core infrastructure, kind of that full stack that you alluded to earlier on in the intro segment. So first of all, that sounds really expensive, time consuming, and maybe other people in the industry might think that's nuts, right? Because it's just not the way that we would do it. It's not as capital efficient, if you will.
Yeah.
But as you're saying, it's delivering 10x better experience. So walk us through kind of like why this approach versus, I guess, the more traditional approach you might see others using.
Yeah, this is a good example of a bad instinct that comes out, right? Sometimes if you think about the consensus at the time would have told and did tell us, hey, don't go buy a bank. You don't want to be a bank. You guys are a technology company. Why are you trying to be a bank? That makes no sense, right? And now the environment's a little bit different now. Everyone's now like, oh, Column's doing great. Let's all go be a bank. But
see, now it's cool.
Yeah, now all of a sudden it's like the coolest thing ever. And I get phone calls all the time.
Right.
Like, oh, can I get some advice on how to be a bank, how to go through this? But you rewind 6 years ago, everybody, like the smartest people in the room, the talking heads, everyone in the industry, why would you want to be a bank? That is the only thing you don't want to do. And we're like, that's the one thing we do want to do. Right. Yeah. It's the exact opposite. And so and credit to William for early on saying, we're going to do the hard shit.
Right.
You don't build generational winning companies doing the easy stuff that everyone else can do. We're going to do the hardest stuff. We're going to do it the hardest way, right? We're going to be smart about how we do it. We're not going to eat glass for no reason, but we're going to go take the hard path. And going back to the example I had earlier, right? Like incrementalism will long-term kill a company or make a company not successful, because that whole fintech layer stack that you were into, that's incrementalism. Hey, what existed before? Okay, let's build on top of that. All right, now what existed there? Okay, let's build on top of that. What existed there? Let's build on top of that. So now you have a stack with 4 or 5 different parties. The data is all messed up going up and down the chain. The integrations, right? Instead of one integration, you have 5 integrations to do one
Right.
thing. And that's incrementalism. But that's the consensus, right? Like, hey, move fast, right? Okay, well, moving fast, pow, just slap another layer on.
Yeah. And a lot of times, Alex, would you say those layers were just like another like middleman a lot of
Yeah,
times? I mean, it was like another like, well, we got to clear through this organization and those APIs I need to connect here, and it won't connect on the back end. And
100%.
yeah,
100%, right? It's like, hey, and I go back to this example. You have a 1980s bank core provider, the first software for banks that ever existed, right? 1980s, mainframes, batch processing, all of the stuff that, everyone, whatever you're picturing in your head about the legacy technology, it's true. It's like, however you're picturing it, it's true, right? Okay, so you have that. Okay, 90s comes in. All right, so there's some new payment processing that shows up. What happens? Okay, some payment processor builds a payment processor layer that sits on top of the core, that sits on top of the bank. Okay, then fintech starts to emerge. What happens? All right, now you have fintech players. What do? Okay, they build a layer on top of the payment processors, on top of the banking core
exactly.
bank. And then you have, okay, well, all right, now you have another layer of middleware. Like, oh, well, we're going to make it easier to connect to multiple, right? So let's build another layer on top. And that at the end of the day, that degrades the experience.
Yeah. Well, it hurts business for us in our analysis. And really, when we went on this journey of looking for a banking partner, it was just kind of more of the same. Every time we turned over a rock and had deeper conversations, by the time we got to C-level suite, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of the same stuff. And if you ask really, really hard questions, because they'll say and promise, we were told and promised everything.
Yeah,
and when you start asking questions, like when you start technically talking about the product itself and getting in there, you're like, okay, well, it's still vanilla. I've had that before. Is there something? And it's just a breath of fresh air. And we started talking to you guys at Column. It was just like, wow, it is a soup to nuts, really an end-to-end experience within banking, where I have really kind of one person to go to, like Anna and Maggie. We wore those.
They're great.
They're incredible. Your team's incredible. We kind of wore them out really kind of on, as we wanted to grow and develop and do new things, because like, look, when you come to something like when we started working with Calm, our mind started just running on what we could build. There were no restrictions on what we could like, oh, wow, we could serve this. We could do it this way. We can add that. Like, it was freeing in a way. I don't know how else to say it, Alex. I mean, it was just like, wow, I have a blank canvas here, and the bank's really allowing us to really kind of come into our own and develop really something really as close as we can get to what that client wants.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. And I think from my perspective, working with Todd and the team, it's 100% ownership on our side, right? And I think I take that really seriously. That's my mindset in my personal life, in my work life, and how we work with clients. It's 100% ownership. We're not looking around, right? If something
that's culture again, like they're owning it.
100%. And that's the mindset here is, hey, when Todd makes a phone call, that's on me, period. Right. And we're going to go solve the problem. My team's going to go solve the problem. And that bleeds through all the folks that like Todd referenced as well. Like we get that phone call in, and this is what that infrastructure helps us do. It gives us 100% ownership. We never have to make a phone call to someone else that's not at Column and say, hey, what's going on? I got this phone call from Todd, and he's having some issues, or he wants to do XYZ, and I got to loop in the Brain Trust and like all these other providers to like figure it out. No, like when Todd makes a phone call, he expects like great customer service, right? He's paying us to deliver a value prop there, and for us, we have to deliver that. It's not up to anyone else. There's no phone calls to make. We have to be able to deliver it. And that's how, that going back to infrastructure question, that enables us to do that because there's no one else to go talk to. We own everything.
It's so fascinating. It's, we've seen this in other areas, right? SpaceX as an example, like, reinventing rockets, right? So what, if you were doing this today, would you do it the same way you did it, back in the 1950s? And the answer is no. What's the most expensive part of launching something into space? Like, well, the rocket, everything that takes the thing into space is, blows up and ends up in the ocean, right? So what if we could reuse that type of stuff? It's kind of like this whole kind of zero-based budgeting type of approach. Like if you were starting at zero today and designing it today, what would it look like? You didn't just design the bank infrastructure, right? The complete, full stack. You reinvented the service culture and the service process, as you were just describing there too, Whereas everybody's been, locked in the phone queue hell when they call a regular bank or something like that, right? Really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, on the service piece, I think that's, it's certainly easy and justified to look at our technology stack. We have world-class engineers. We have a world-class engineering leader in William. So I think it's 100% justified that that's generally the focus of what is Column doing differently. But I think the other area that we truly excel at, that I think the folks who work with us get to see, but obviously if you haven't worked with us, you don't get to see, is we're the hungriest team out there. That's it. That's it, right? What does that mean? We're the hungriest team out there. That means for us to be successful, our clients need to be successful. And for our clients to be successful, man, we're 24/7. And when I talk about 100% ownership, right? We have to deliver. There's no, oh, let me let this sit for a day. Let's let this go to a queue. Oh, that's a tough problem. Oh, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Everything's a big deal. When Todd calls, every question and problem Todd has is a big deal for us, period. Right? And that's the level of hunger that goes into our service, into our enterprise partnerships when we work with folks like Todd. That hopefully, and I think it shows because Todd had the choice to work with, we're not the only provider that does what we do, right? I think we're the only ones that can do what we do, but there are folks who are like alternatives, right? You can probably make it work. Banking ecosystem existed beforehand. Todd had the choice to go work with all those people, probably even pay a little bit less, right? But he chose to work with us. I take that very seriously as a commitment and trust in us, and we have to deliver on that every day. And I'll say a lot of the largest fintech companies and processing companies choose to work with us despite, us being more expensive, because we come in with that level of service and just hey, our partners have to win at any cost mindset. It's not just about us because, I can sit here and be like, Column's got to win under any mindset. That doesn't matter. That only happens if our partners win, right? And so for us, that goes straight through to Todd and his team. Every day, I'm always pushing the folks on our team. How do we enable our clients to be more successful? What are you doing to make our clients more successful? Right? I don't want this to be like our clients coming to us and saying, I need XYZ. I want it to be a flip. I'm like, hey, have you guys thought about XYZ? Man, this might be great for you guys if you guys thought about this. Because at the end of the day, like I said, we only win if our clients win.
Love it. So let's shift gears a little bit into payments. You've got this framework that I absolutely love for thinking about payments that's kind of completely reframes the entire industry. You said that 99.999, so triple nines, percent of the time, you said money shows up the right amount, right time, nobody cares. Your paycheck hits, you swipe your card. It's kind of a boring space, the happy, but that 1/100th of a thousandth time, whatever they point, so we're getting into with a percent. That edge case, right? That's where all the problems, the headaches, and all the pain come from. So walk us through this philosophy, because I think it's a really smart one. And it's very illustrative of what you're doing there. And of course, it'll get us into, it's kind of why Six Lock is chosen to work with you. Why is payments fundamentally an edge case game? And how does that change the way you think about building the infrastructure to service them?
Yeah, this ties together a lot of what we've talked about today. So everyone's a consumer, right? Anyone listening to this. And each individual probably makes hundreds of payments a month. You think about every time you swipe the credit card, every time you buy something online or do a return. You probably don't think about any of those transactions, right? Like bills getting pulled from your bank account, utilities, whatever, you probably don't think about it. You probably remember that time your car got declined at the grocery store for no reason, right? You probably remember that time that you filed a return and you didn't get the dollars. So those are the edge cases, right? And it's really visceral because things just work. At the end of the day, generally the infrastructure is pretty good for the happy path. Things just work and you don't think about it. But the one time it doesn't work, and money is so mentally important for a lot of people for the right reasons, right? And so when it doesn't work, you're all of a sudden wait, why didn't I get that money? Or why didn't this go through? Why didn't this work? And that carries through, on the consumer side. Obviously, it matters on the business side too. And so who do we service, right? We service our partners, service end users who are trying to transact in some way, shape, or form. And so you go back to that example of that end user. has that one transaction that becomes really visceral, right? This is where everyone gets in those like long email exchanges with customer support. You're on the phone, like, what's going on? Like, why, right? Like that, that generates like 80% of the cost for a lot of folks in payments is dealing with those cases. And so obviously, because it's important to those end users, those consumers and businesses, it's important for people like Todd's company, right? Todd and his company, hey, and his clients, these funds. Man, you really don't, you talk about a customer being annoyed about their credit card getting declined at a grocery store, a fund losing dollars from, some sort of LPGP transaction. That's like 1,000x that, right? In terms of
Yep. Right.
the annoyance that could come from that. And so for us, right, I would say at the end of the day, like 99.9% of the time, you're using our technology, you're working with our team. It looks about the same in many ways, because when things work, they work. No one does anything. Okay, but when things break and they're not working, this is where owning 100% of the infrastructure stack matters. This is where having a team that's every day thinking about, hey, how do we make our clients win matters? Because what happens in those situations? When that payment goes wrong, right? Someone's going to reach out to Todd. Todd needs to have that answer ASAP. He can't be like, I don't know. What was it? Sorry, what number did you say? $1 million? Oh, let me get back to you on that. No.
Yeah.
No, right? And then like 2 days later, hey, we're still looking into it. Don't worry about it. I'm not Of course they're worried. What do you mean don't worry about it, right?
That's right.
And so when we
it's usually at all hands on deck. Like if these things happen, and look, it's not just, oh my gosh, all hands on deck. It doesn't mean like panic and chaos. It means, oh my gosh, I get to learn from this. Let's figure this out. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Because 9 out of 10, 99 points, whatever, we have heard of a lot of like things that have happened. We break our own stuff here all the time. We break glass and eggs all the time trying to figure out how do we make it stronger? How do we make it better? How do we polish this? I mean, what are all the esoteric cases that we can poke and prod this software to make it break? And, so yeah, that's our laboratory here. So when someone does call up, it's like, ooh, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. We nerd on this stuff. What can I say? Right.
And that's where ultimately, that's where the value is, right? What Todd has described is, hey, if he created an 80-20 product, who cares?
Yeah.
But he's hardening his system so that in those edge cases, when his clients run into it, he can resolve it ASAP, right? And that creates a 10x experience for those clients. And then that then bleeds up to us. Like, how do we provide a 10x experience to Todd? Because Todd is building on top of our infrastructure so that he can do what he does best so that we can do what we do best, right? Because I don't know how to sell to Todd's customers. I would talk to them and be like, I'm not interested in working with you, Alex. You have no clue how our business works, right? But for us, then, it's all about, hey, we own the full infrastructure stack. In those 0.01% of issues, we have all the data and ability to get back to Todd ASAP. Perhaps even in an automated way where he can just, his engineering team can go take a look at the data that's coming back from us and be like, here's exactly what happened.
Right.
Now he can tell his customer, right? Or if there's an issue, oftentimes it's a bank-to-bank transaction, right? We have to go work with other banks. The beauty of us transacting trillions of dollars a year is we have that connection into the decision makers at all the major money center banks from an operations perspective. So when Todd calls, and I hope he doesn't have to ever make this call. Hey, I have a customer who wants to know what happened to this, $15 million wire. Okay, or like, hey, this $15 million wire may have gone to somewhere it shouldn't have because of an account takeover, man in the middle, whatever, make it up, right? We have an ability, more so than any other bank, and we've done this before in the past. If that call comes in, we can try to intercept that before it goes anywhere else because we move at that level of speed and pace, right? And that's two pieces. The fact that we have the data, A, so that we can immediately look and be like, here's who we have to call. And then B, because I have a team that's just frankly hungrier than anyone else who's going to make that call before anyone else. Right. And so in that edge case situation, who's your best bet? And my humble opinion is that it's Column. I think many folks in the market would say it's Column. We can always be better, 100%. And we're always going to focus on being better. But I do think that right now, in that edge case scenario, if you're going to bet on one company to get you your funds back to resolve the issue, it would be Column.
Alex, tell me a little bit about how does Column approach AI today? AI, I think one of the things, the big questions around AI today is like, man, where are my bumpers on this? If I'm
Yeah.
having AI work, and obviously it's in a tokenized world and we're that kind of thing, no matter what platform you're using, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, like how, there's your world, my world, it's sensitive data and there's a lot of it. And there has to be curbs to this. But anyway, two-part question, like how are y'all thinking about using AI? I'm sure you're using it today.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a thing. I think it's revolutionary. Honestly, we're in a magnificent era of time because
Yeah.
this tool is absolutely it's massive leverage. It's exponentially work on top of itself. It can get you where you want to go very quickly. You can build quick. You can do a lot of things quick. And second thing is just kind of like what does that look like for the future of the bill or product wise for Column? How are you using it today, and just kind of future wise, how does it play into some of the some of your roadmap?
Yeah, it's I was just looking at the stat. It's quickly become the second largest expense item for us after payroll, which is, millions of dollars a year at this point. And it should be, from my perspective. We have I think it's like, we have a bunch of A players who we pay money through salaries to, right? And some percentage of their total salary is that AI spend. And I think about it as like, hey, how do you going back to that conversation before, right? How do you enable A players to go be great? Man, to me, that's AI is the most obvious answer. We're not hiring, rewind like 10 years ago, man, you shouldn't hire bankers and not give them Excel, right? If Excel was like,
Right. Yeah.
30,000 a year, you'd be like, yeah, pay the $30,000 a year. You have a
Yeah.
sales team out in the field, go invest in the CRM. Right.
Right.
And this is the next generation that, man, we bring these A players in. How do we unlock that and make them even better and greater every single day? It's, hey, go adopt these tools, go learn, go play around and get really good at them to go create leverage for the business. Right. And so just from a top level metric, hey, this is our highest spend increase area. I actually love it. Looking over our financials, you would think, hey guys, cut it back, whatever. I'm like, let it rip.
Yep.
Let this rip. It's okay for overspending here because we want everyone to get comfortable and make mistakes and do all of this stuff and play around with it. And we'll spend that money so that when we can reach the equilibrium state where folks are actually good at it. That's on the spend side, just give you a sense of how much we're adopting it right now. And then from an actual adoption perspective, the obvious piece is our engineering team. I think I'm going to butcher the number, but some recent stat was, hey, less than 10% of the code is written by hand now.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, that the same team that we have today can create 10x the output that we had before. And that's crazy, right? Because before I'm like, hey, we had a 10x engineering team. You take the 10x engineering team, you 10x the output. Man, we're like 100x from an average company
Seriously.
from like a couple years ago. And then
that's right.
Right. So your product velocity is just going that much faster. And then you think about internal tooling. Think about all these software companies that sell internal tools, these multi-billion-dollar companies that sell dashboards or ways to visualize data or ways to communicate with each other. These are all things that we have individuals who will build those products in-house now with Claude Code, and that's insane, right? And I'll give you another example for me personally. My chief of staff today is Claude Code. You might think, hey, most people go hire a chief of staff. I'm super busy. I need things prioritized. I need folks. I need to reach out these teams, checking on these things. Imagine the general job description of a chief of staff. Claude Code can do all of that for me. It's plugged into Slack. It's plugged into my email. It's plugged into all of the ways that we communicate as a team internally and externally. And so for me, right, what do I need? In the morning, I need a daily briefing of everything that's gone down since I was asleep. Okay, here's everything that happened. Okay, hey, here's some follow-up areas that I care about. I'm just talking to Claude Code. I'm like, hey, show me everywhere. Let's say, 6 o'clock, there was a conversation. Anna has a follow-up internally. Okay, I'm getting that summary up there. Hey, Claude, pull me all of the data that we have on our conversations with 6 o'clock and their transaction activity and all these things, right, over the last month. Boom, snapshot. Everything shows up. Okay, I'm plugged in now. This is stuff that people would hire a really expensive post-MBA chief of staff to go do, right? At a really smart person that's plugged into the organization that has all this context. And I run it out of Claude Code.
Do you ever worry about whether that will you might be missing out on the next Alex Do with that, right? Like you didn't highlight, you know what I mean? Like William had you, right? And are you worried about that at all?
I don't think that's that big of a loss for which we appreciate you saying that, but it's not the worry. I'm sure some people would be like, could be worse. I think we always have appetite for top talent A players.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of conversation around, AI is going to replace jobs. AI is going to do all this stuff. And I think about it differently. I think about, AI might replace some jobs and some work and some people, but those are not the people we've been looking to hire, right? It doesn't even depend on the function, because someone might say like, AI is going to replace this entire function. No, there's always going to be humans in the loop, right? And those humans are going to be 10x better, 10x more enabled with AI, and we're going to go find those people and empower them with the AI. And so, we have a never-ending appetite for A talent, and we will go continue to hunt those people down, bring them onto the team, and enable them to be successful. So I don't think of it as like, let's pull a bunch of JDs off. Like, sure, maybe in some very hyper-specific JDs, we can say we no longer need these because we've automated it. But that creates more roles for smart A players elsewhere to come in. And actually, one area that's been pretty interesting is generalists. Actually are a little bit more interesting these days than hyper function specific people, because like a really talented generalist that is kind of like a stem cell, you give them Claude Code, man, you can go. Anything could happen.
Right? It's a really good analogy, by the way.
Yeah.
Right on.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic. So I know we only have a few minutes left to each other, and we're kind of heading for home here.
Yeah.
But I want to ask a question. I really enjoy talking to people, especially in your position, who've grown something from, the earliest of stages into something incredibly successful. And that's what surprised you? Like, what didn't you see coming in the early days of Column? Because, you obviously your role has grown, you've expanded, you've matured, as you mentioned, you kind of got rid of some of those bad instincts over the years, but inevitably you have one kind of thesis of like, this is the thing and this is what's going to happen. And then you get out in the world and it says, no, guess what? Here's some other stuff you didn't see coming.
Yeah, I'll give two, like one on the business and one just from like my personal experience, right? So the business perspective, there are so many problems in the space that we play in. And go back to what I said, hey, large market, visceral problem statement. We got in, I think we're doing a decent job of solving the problem that we set out to solve. And just the amount of people on a day-to-day basis that are adjacent to our business who come, hey, saw what you guys do. Can you do this for me in this area? Can you bring some of that product and execution over to this part of banking? And you think about a company like JP Morgan, right? Which I actually have great respect for. Everyone thinks like, Alex is probably gonna not like any of the banks. I have great respect for them. Just think about the surface area they cover. And I would say, I think about JP Morgan as like, they're probably like, there's a floor to like what they do. They're probably like a B at minimum cross board of everything. However, that means there's this massive surface area where people desire A, right, of everything that they do. And so you can imagine over the last couple of years, everyone's coming and like, like I'm getting like a B here. I'm looking for an A plus, because I'd be willing to pay a lot more for that. And so that's one area that's pleasantly surprised me, is how big the TAM actually is. There's always like the TAM on paper as an MBA student, as an investor, whatever it is. You're like, here's a number, here's circles, here's a big number. I get it, and I'm like, shit, that's a big number. Like, when you're actually executing, the difference between operator investors, like operators are having those conversations every day. They're feeling the market, they're seeing the market, right? Investors' numbers on the page, and I'm feeling the numbers on the page in a very real way, which is awesome.
Yeah. But you have TAM expansion just from the standpoint of like your clients are bringing you things you're like, didn't see that. I don't know that market, but you're bringing me this thing and you're diving in it like you did with us. Like we dug into it, and like, you're like, whoa, okay, wait a second. That's niche. That's a vertical. That's you're a first mover in that. And I get it. That makes total sense. And you and I've talked about capital calls and distributions and the pain around all of that too. So I can just imagine, like, we're not the only ones, right? Like Column experiences all of these ideas and these cases kind of coming from customers saying, What about this? What about that? And like, that's amazing. That's a cool spot to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I mentioned on the personal side, I'll add maybe one of the biggest surprises. And once again, this is my first time, right? I'm always like, hey, 3 years from now, I'll have things figured out. 2 years from now, like I'm learning, I'm going through a learning curve. And in my mind, it's like at some point you like get to the other side of the learning curve. And man, that's just not the case at all. Right? Like the company gets bigger, my surface area changes, responsibility change, the market changes.
Yeah.
And that's been a really cool surprise.
Yeah.
Whereas
I'm in the same boat, Alex. Like I just keep absorbing, keep being a sponge.
yeah.
I think part of it is just like curiosity. You're being a curiosity person yourself, like me. I'm just always kind of like, man, how does that work? And how can we rework this? How can we redo that? And how do we make our clients even have a bigger smile on their face at the end? But it's all just like, I'm still on this curve. I'm still on it, you know?
Todd, I don't know about you, but I'm like, for the first year, I'm not like this anymore, but this is like the first 3 years, I was always thinking, man, just one more year and I'll get into a more comfortable, steady state. Just one more year, I'll get into like the company will be in a good place and like I'll be in a good place. And now I'm like, every day you wake up and it feels like someone's jostling you with just like all this like new just input and stimulus, right? That you have to process and turn into something that's viable strategy, direction, execution for the team.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to a place where, man, I just love the game. Like that's the game, and I love it.
Yeah, it is. It's 100% right. And I think that pressure you're feeling doesn't go away. I think as an entrepreneur, that's just something you live with. But that's part of the privilege too. Like that's part of the privilege of being in a spot that we're in right now, serving our customers and serving our employees from the standpoint of like having to problem solve, having to absorb as much as they can throw at you at one time, staying on the curve of curiosity, as you well put it, and just always digging in and trying to figure it out and keep going. But you're right. It is. So someone told me this a long time ago too. It's just that like running a business and being involved in the operations and growing it and always thinking, well, how do we be better? This healthy level of paranoia.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And you have to embrace that, I think.
100%. Yeah. And you'll never be comfortable.
100% you won't be that. Like,
and that's
we just got back.
You're doing it right.
I know, right? Look, I would have hosted you guys last week to barbecue here in Austin, Texas, but like, I had the family on spring break. What was I doing during spring break? Slack. What are we working on?
In the game, can't take you away.
I can't. It's too fun.
Yeah.
I love it. I love 100%. It. I love the way you said it, Todd. It's a privilege, right? It really is, because it's like not everybody gets these opportunities that you have to go out and put your mark on the world, right? And solve big problems for people. So speaking of privilege, it's been an absolute privilege having you on the show, Alex. People can find you on LinkedIn. We'll get that linked up in the show, saying column.com. Is there any other place like we should be sending people to go, hey, go here, learn some more stuff about Alex doing the stuff that Column's doing?
Yeah, I don't think folks need to do any learning on me. It might be, I don't know if it would be worthwhile, but on Column, column.com. We have we don't do a lot of PR, but we recently published an article with Upstart with this guy Alex Conrad, wrote a great profile on us that you can take a look at to learn a little bit more about the business. And then our CEO, co-founder CEO, who I obviously respect quite a bit, recently went on another podcast, Invest Like the Best, to talk a little bit about how he thinks about Column and Plaid. So I would check those out if this at all piqued anyone's interest.
Fantastic. This has been great. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you both.
This is a lot of fun.
This is awesome.